So the idea of this talk is to talk about exponential technologies and the implications of it for business. Right? I'm not a techie, unlike most of you in this room. I'm kind of a quasi-techie, so I sit between the business and the technology. And I'm constantly thinking how technology will change business or society in general. So just to set the ground in terms of where I come from, so I run a futurist meetup in Singapore. So I've lived in Singapore for the last 19 years. And I'm new to Bangalore, it's 3 months. So, we at the futurist meetup talk about like a 10-20 year time span, how technology is going to change different aspects of life and the implications for it to the business. So the idea is to take a bird's eye view. So we're not going to go into great detail, but we're going to talk about the broader implications. So let's start with something really fundamental to what is happening in this area. So let's say if we have a choice, right, to say I can give you 10 lakhs today, or I'll give you 1 paisa today, which will double every day over the next 30 days. Right, so what would you pick?
Second one. Second.
Okay, give me a number. How much bigger than 10 lakhs?
Exponential.
How much? More than? Yeah, of course. So, what is that number?
One with around 29 or 30 zeros.
Okay, so it's 53 lakhs, right? So the key point here is our intuitions are very bad when the trend is exponential, right? So that is the key point. So now that we know it's like 53 lakhs in 30 days, what happens in another 5 days, right? So it becomes 17 crores in 35 days, it becomes 549 crores in 40 days, right? So this is very, very not intuitive, right? Our brain is not wired to think exponential, right? So we are linear thinkers, and our brain cannot deal with it. Because every time I see this, I get surprised, right? So, so this is, you're familiar with this exponential curve. It kind of just goes crazy once it crosses that point, right? So, till here it is a little bit deceptive, and then it just changes the style very quickly. Right, so, I kind of put it in Excel to see how this changes, right? So the 1 paisa becomes 2, and the 2 becomes 8, and we're familiar with this story, right? The chessboard story with rice. So, if you look at this, how quickly it changes, and then once it crosses a point, then it really starts to dramatically change, right? But why is this important for us to understand, right? So if you look at the human brains, sorry, this is not very clear, but this diagram shows how the human brain has evolved in terms of size and its capability over the millennium, right? So it's million years of development. But you'd see a very similar curve here in terms of how the brain changed and then the implications of it, right? So, in terms of the human population, we've dramatically increased over the last, few hundred years. And that is, because of this trend, right? So, our brain is linear also because if you look at the last 70,000 years or so, most of our life has been in the savannas, in the African forests, right? And, as a hunter, you just need to figure out if the deer is running that way, I need to point my arrow here. So it's a very linear equation to solve, right? So I just have to solve that equation, and that's what the brain is built for, right? We don't have a lot of exponential phenomena in real life that we deal with.
Linear because my perspective there are 5 senses
linear as in the changes is not exponential, right? So the speed of the deer is, constant. The speed of your arrow is constant, so you could meet the deer and the arrow at a different place, right?
Within each dimension.
Yeah. So that is the idea, right? So the key point is we have a linear handicap in the brain, right? We cannot process exponential. How much ever we try, we would always miss exponential change. And this is very important to understand. We need to recognize that we have this handicap, right? So this is a key point. So if you look at, most of you should be familiar with a graph like this. So over the years, we've seen the computing capability increase dramatically, and I think you kind of reached a point where it's like a mouse's brain, right? But around 2025, it is expected to reach like the human brain's capability, right? And this is, excuse my French, the shit is going to get real, right? So when you reach that type of capabilities, then everything changes, right? So as technologists, as businesses, we need to see what this means, right? The implications are really, really big. We'll go through this in a little bit. And it's not, so because of computing, this exponential trend is happening in all of these technologies, right? In machine learning, in robotics, in biotech, in nanotech, in medicine, energy computing, everywhere, right? So this is happening not just in computers, right? So if you look at your iPhone 1 and iPhone now, the price performance has increased like 80 times, right? So if that happens in 10 other fields, the world would be very different. And that is the key message of this talk. And this is a key consideration for any business. It's a key consideration for any technologies. Right. So these are, I'm really sorry about the quality of the pictures. So these are some of the graphs, right? So some of them are exponential graphs, some of them are linear graphs. These trends are happening in solar, it's happening in cost of processing, sequencing genome, the size of nano machines. It's happening in a lot of these places, right? That, for example, the quality of neuroimaging, in all of these areas, this trend is continuing. In some areas, in fact, it's actually doing more than Moore's law. It's actually doubling less than 18 months, right? Particularly in gene sequencing, this is happening a lot faster. So, because of our linear brain, we think this is where we will end up, and this is actually where we end up. And this gap is the tension, right? This is the fuck up, right? So many businesses have paid a price, and we are going to see more and more businesses pay a price, and we as individuals paying a price, right? Because of this gap between what we anticipate and what actually would happen, right? And if you just go back to our previous, graph, because of its exponential, every period the change is doubling, right? Even if you understood one change, the next change is going to be so much bigger. It's hard to anticipate. And if this is happening in 5 or 6 different areas, it's going to get a lot more complex, right? And this is going to be the real challenge for any business, to see what is the implication and how we are going to deal with it.
So, what is the outcome? Should we losing our job?
Yeah, job is probably the least of our concerns. We talk about this. So, from a business perspective, right? Organizations are, like us. They change logarithmically, but technology is changing exponentially, and this gap is the most complex thing to deal with, right? If we master this, we succeed. If we don't, then yes, swept away. So, how come this happens, right? So there is, I mean, anybody is familiar with the Singularity University or Ray Kurzweil? So, Ray Kurzweil's co-founder, Peter Diamond, has put together a pretty powerful idea. So the idea is, if something gets digitized, right, the moment something gets digitized, it kind of unleashes a chain reaction, right? And the chain reaction is something like this, right? Something gets digitized, then it's deceptive for a while, right? The changes in that, the implications of that is slow, right? It takes a while. So for that period, the rest of the world, the other businesses which are in the analog world, ignore it or think the digital is a joke, right? And then suddenly, overnight, it disrupts. And once it disrupts, anybody who is the current stakeholders in the system, they get demonetized. They lose all their revenue opportunities. Then it gets dematerialized. It sits in some other device. It sits in some other service, and it gets democratized. A lot of people get to use it. Right, let's take an example. So there's a famous example, which is the Kodak camera, and now it is kind of the Kodak moment, which was, I don't know if you're familiar with the ad Kodak moment. Now the Kodak moment is when an incumbent gets disrupted, right? So that's kind of the new Kodak moment. So basically, if you look at Kodak, they pioneered in the camera industry. In fact, their R&D department created the first digital camera. When they presented to the board said, we are in the chemicals business, we are selling films. Why are you, if you digitize, you kill our business. Plus, this is like a $10,000 camera for 0.1 megapixel picture, right? This is a joke, go away, This is not our future, go away. So, as you know, they realize the digital cameras start to take place, then they refocus on digital, but it's too late, right? And 2012, they filed for bankruptcy, right? So now if you look at the biggest camera manufacturers are smartphone companies, right? Samsung probably is the biggest camera company, right? So, I mean, this is kind of what happened for Kodak, right? So if we kind of take the process, Kodak creates a digital camera. At that time, a lot of people are starting to play with digital camera. It's for a long period, for about 10 years, if the performance of the analog camera was like this, the digital camera was like this, so it's kind of slowly climbing up. And anybody who is in the industry would think, oh, this is going to take 30 years to catch up. Because they think linear, but it changes exponentially. Like even now, if you look at some of the estimates of how much solar is going to be created next year, or how much 3D printing is growing next year, still the projections are so linear, and they get it wrong every year. Right? So this is a difficult thing to do. So it's deceptive, and then suddenly it starts to perform better than the analog camera. Then anybody who is an existing digital camera player or an analog camera player loses their revenue. They get pushed out of the market. The margins get squeezed, and then suddenly the whole digital camera as a device is only for professionals. It kind of dematerializes, sits inside your smartphone, right? You don't pay for a digital camera anymore, and then everybody has access to it, right? So this is, if you see something digitized, you could pretty much expect all of this to happen until there's no money in that, right? For the existing players. So it's a powerful tool to look at if you're working in a specific industry. If there are some analog components that are getting digitized, this would happen. For example, healthcare is a classic example. It's starting to get digitized, right? So we are in the very early stages of digitization. Once it gets more and more digital, it would completely transform. There are hundreds of examples of anything. If it gets digitized, you can see this happen. Like, cars are another example. Once it becomes smart cars, once it becomes driverless, then the changes to that is going to get very quick. It would pretty much, Ford and all the existing car companies are not going to be car companies in the future. Right? Google, Apple may be the biggest car company. So, we can, this is a big wave coming, right? And this is not just one wave, there will be multiple waves coming. We can surf the wave or be swept by it, right? So, and this is scary, right? I mean, because it's not just one thing that is changing, there are multiple things that are changing. And to your question, right? So what's going to happen to our jobs? What's going to happen to the companies we depend on? This is the the key question that I think all of us should spend a lot of time thinking about and understanding. I don't know if you guys have seen this picture, right? So how quickly something changes. So this is 2005 when the new Pope came in at that time, right? And this is 2013 when the current Pope, got installed. No cameras, absolutely zero cameras, everybody has a camera, right? And that is 8 years, right? So this is the democratization we're talking about, right?
So democratization or individualism?
I'm sorry?
Democratization or individualism?
No, it is, everybody has access, right? So the idea is, anybody has access to a phone, right? So this is...
No, that becomes individualism. Democratization is, we can all share and see things. Individualism is, I don't share and I see it for myself, right? So the second picture, if you go back to the previous one, the older one said, it's not there, I will try to see and things like that, we all help each other. The second one is focused on, I want to see, I don't care what who else can see, and I just see the best, I don't care.
I think I can talk in that something. That democracy is sharing one particular one you are saying, but other thing is equality. Democracy shares about equality. Everyone is equal in voting. If you are telling in that way, you don't discriminate that this citizen has a voting power, is not here. That is the democracy is there. Similar way in the case of mobile phone, everyone has access to the mobile. Don't be discriminated by the money. Like you don't have, you are a rich fellow, then you can have mobile. You are poor fellow, you cannot get. So it makes accessible to everyone. That is the democracy.
Really, when we talk about democracy and individualization, we not talk about money. Give money.
So let's
let's move on, guys.
Just look up. It's different than democracy. So just look up democratization with respect to technology. That will be.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Actually, let's continue.
So this is another example of how quickly consumer behavior changes, right? So like the previous one, here, everybody's trying to get an autograph. In 10 years, it completely changed, right? So autograph is no longer, selfie is the new autograph, right? So, I think this is a great quote. This is one of the the big implications, right? So you take any existing product, add AI to it, and you have the idea for the next X thousand products, right? And this is going to replace AI with like nanotech, or you replace AI with depending upon the area, replace this with technology. New businesses, new opportunities start up here, right? And I think the key point is like Kevin Kelly's quote, like we are in the first hour of the internet, right? So we've not even seen everything that's possible with the internet. And then if you add all of these technologies on top of it, it's going to be really crazy, right? So, if you look at, this is one of the manifestations of this trend, right? So 2006, there's one tech company in the top 5 in the publicly traded companies in the world. 2011, one. 2016, nothing but tech, right? So, like Walmart, for example, they didn't think they were a tech company until recently. Now, they're forced to think they're a tech company. Right? Walmart says we are a tech company now, right? So this is like somebody like Ford has to be forced to think digital tech company, right? So that's the trend, right? And this is, I think this is going to get bigger and bigger, right? The other aspect that I want to briefly mention is the Fortune 500, right? The number of years a company spent in Fortune 500 is dramatically reducing, right? It used to be like 50, 60 years. Now it's kind of less than 20 years. You cannot stay in the Fortune 500 for long because the changes are difficult to deal with, right? So one way of understanding the real implication of this is, if you look at how we learn new things and how we change the physical world, right? So we kind of, in a pre-Stone Age era, the only thing you have is the muscle, right? Everything you need to do, if you need to get food, if you need to get shelter, everything you need to use your muscle, right? And then we start to use some tools. It gets a little better. And then we start to use animals, tame animals, and add animals, use animals instead of your muscle. It gets a little bit better. And then steam engine, electric, industrial automation, right? So all of that keeps increasing what you can do, right? Instead of just depending on your muscle. And then, we kind of ended up with robotics now. The same way, how we learn, right? So learning happens in most species through genes, right? So if there is an environmental change, a lot of the members of the species die, and some members who did not die have these capabilities which gets passed on, and that's how learning happened throughout evolution, right? So then with some of the mammals and the higher primates, learning by seeing happens, right? And then learning by pictures and symbols in early human development, and then language, and then education, and then now algorithms, and then machine learning, right? So this is kind of how learning happens, but also how the learning spreads, right? All of this gets really faster and faster. So now these two are, robotics and learning is going to come together. It gets even more crazy, right? The speed at which this happens is going to increase, right? So this is how the exponential curve is going to happen, right? When these two meet, it's just happening, and as this gets more and more real, then the rate of change, the size of change is going to get bigger and bigger, right? So that's what's going to get us from, 53 lakhs to 550 crores in like 10 days, right? So every year is going to get bigger and bigger. I don't know the exact numbers, but somebody was saying the next 10 years is not going to be like 20 years or 30 years of growth. It's going to be like 10,000 years of growth, right? So we're going to do a lot of growth in a short period of time, right? A lot of change, right? And for some it may not be growth, right? So one of the interesting business implications of this trend, right? Because of it has become easier and easier to start a company, and it's becoming the knowledge is spreading faster. It's easier to learn. It's easier to understand. It's easier to build. What is the implication, right? So let's take one example. So this is Wells Fargo. Somebody was from Wells Fargo. So if you look at their website, so there are like so many different services, right? So they have lending, they have insurance, they have wealth management, they have all sorts of credit cards, all sorts of businesses, right? So what is the threat for Wells Fargo, right? So the threat comes like this. So these are the various startups that are working on each of the individual pieces, right? So if you take something like lending, there are like 15 startups focused on just that area, right? And this is, so basically this is like death by 1,000 cuts, right? So how do you compete in this environment? Right. So the implications of that, right? So if you look at Walmart versus Amazon, so, I'm really sorry about this. So 2015, Amazon took over Walmart, right? So what took, many tens of years for Walmart to build, Amazon was able to do it in 15 years, right? And they're growing faster. The same thing happened with Netflix versus Blockbuster, and there are hundreds of examples of this, right? But for somebody who has a leading position in an industry, has a lot of power and muscle and money, could still be beaten by somebody else, right? And this is the biggest implication. How do you see your business? Do you see your business as a lending company of DVDs, or do you see as an entertainment company? Right? Depending upon how you see, you could change. You could be able to better deal with it. So this is like what happened to newspapers in terms of their revenue, advertising revenue over the years, right? So there have been ups and downs always, but then when this happened, a lot of people would think, yeah, it's going to go up. It has happened many times before, right? And so this is kind of the point of disruption, right? Where it no longer is true, right? Because the digital media has crossed a point where it's hard for newspapers to be successful anymore.
Surprisingly, in India, that's not true.
It's going to happen, right? It's just a question of time. Right? It's just a question of time. So, as broadband accessibility becomes better, as more and more people have these devices which are getting cheaper and cheaper, there's no way traditional media is going to.
Just to add that actually our generation, observing that kind of IT trend or the changes happening around the world or in India maybe. Our generation very luckily we can observe that.
Yeah, totally. And I think it is true. Even for it's the accessibility of technology. Comes in so many ways, right? Like, let's say an Uber driver uses maps so intuitively, right? So it's just because these things are going to become almost part of your environment.
And loss of student intuition.
I'm sorry?
The Uber driver intuitively uses the app and lost his own intuition.
Yeah, sure. So this is like an argument of saying, oh,
No, I'm not talking an argument at all.
No, I'm saying this is an idea, right? So we should know multiplication tables. We should write our answers. So we shouldn't use calculators, right? So these are always going to be, as things change, there's going to be always pushback. Oh, no longer people understand how to go somewhere because they are very dependent upon maps. But this has been the story of progress throughout the human evolution.
When you talk about progress is an exponential way, maybe we are just seeing the rise. We have anticipated many times. Take any brand and just say there is a downfall, right? So, and with this existing advancements in medicine and all, also we are facing the side effects of it. Maybe, population growth, environment changes, many other things which are in the need of we have to do something in those areas. I know this, I can understand or at least imagine that bringing nanotechnology, robotics and all can help in these areas as well, which are actually the basic needs of human being. And in many cases we see that they're actually going to find our roots. Like many people are turning from the latest advancements in certain areas to agriculture.
Sure.
For example,
No,
I'm not telling that it solves everything, but there has to be balance between Ayurveda and the latest technologies that's happening. This is good in some, that is good in some. So we are currently, human being with his thinking has always failed to anticipate where we would be in future. Now how do we, be assertive about we will grow as exponentially forever? I don't think that
So I mean, I think this is a great point, right? So, and there are people who are really worried about this particular point, right? So Elon Musk's Neuralink is one of the answers to this, right? So because we know the evolution of the brain is slow, and if the environment changes too fast, we cannot cope with, the brain cannot do it. So the only way is to, plug in AI into your brain, right? So create a network on top of your brain, connect to the internet, and then, then you can start to process data a lot better, right? So Neuralink, the idea of Neuralink is exactly that. There's a company called Kernel, which the idea is, can I plug something to my brain to add IQ? I mean, for example, if you look at a country like India or Bangladesh or many countries in Africa, because of malnutrition, you have a population that has lost like 30-40 IQ points during growing up, right? And how do you solve this problem? So can we add a cognitive crutch, right? So that we get better. If you solve IQ, then you solve poverty, you solve all those things that come with lower IQ, right? So there are many attempts like this, and like OpenAI is an example of this. So there are a lot of people who are concerned about the implications of this, and there are a lot of ethical implications, particularly in the bio side. But the harsh reality is this: nobody can stop this technological change, right? Whether we like it or not, this is going to happen, right? The question is like, how do we cope with it? How do we deal with it? Is the real question, right? But also to your point, right? So let me see if I can go to the source, because the graphs are not very clear.
Just type in something.
Huh?
Just type in something.
Oh. Okay, good. I hope this is a little more clearer. So, these are tens of graphs. I would totally recommend you to go to this website, peterdiamandis.com, and look at the data, right? So these are evidence of the impact of technology on many areas, right? So we always have this nostalgia of the older times that are happier and nicer and better, right? And it is in most situations a flawed nostalgia, right? So things have developed and improved a lot, right? And if you really understand, you wouldn't want to go back to those times, even if you're paid a lot of money. So a king who is, like a 15th century, 16th century king has a same lifestyle of somebody who's average income guy in Africa, right? So because this is what technology has done, right? So these are examples, many examples of the number of hours human beings have to work every week, to a number of slaves. Let me see if I can go to these slides a bit more. Okay, so this is the annual, hours worked per person. These are the number of democracies over the years. Percentage of slaves and serfs have dramatically come down. Degrees awarded to women has increased quite dramatically in the last 50 years. This is not a very convincing graph, but we are closing the gender gap. this is a controversial slide to probably to many of you. So increasing technology leads to increasing happiness. The amount of time homemakers have to.
The previous slide doesn't have Sikkim, one of the most happiest countries in the world.
I'm sorry?
Bhutan.
Actually,
One of the things, when you take Peter Diamond's thing, one of the questions I want to ask is how valid it is. Maybe, are you looking at the invalid data? I'm not questioning you, I'm questioning the data which you are showing. Are you showing invalid data because it doesn't have Bhutan? It brings USA, and actually the US everyone says, we are back, way back. And
So,
this projects in a different way.
but what is your basis to think Bhutan is the happiest place in the world? I mean, Bhutan does have a happiness index.
Yes,
The government does measure happiness.
Yes.
But what makes you say they are the happiest? Right? There are some examples of people who are very happy who are not tech savvy, right? But this is the general trend. So countries which are very tech savvy.
So here's only
So-
taken feedback from tech savvy people. The whole world.
Okay, sorry. So the source of that information is there, so you can look it up.
Yeah.
At the bottom there is source. It's not paid limits data also. The sources are different. So
But
Yeah.
I think
just
this
blame the source for it, but let's move forward.
Yeah.
This is the controversial slide. Let's.
Yeah, exactly.
Statistical correlation is actually manipulated most of the time actually. So you cannot tell. This actually, if you go mathematics and statistics, and that difference is there. Mathematics is absolute. If something is theorem, you know that it is correct. Statistics gives lots of playground to manipulate your result. That is happening here also. So if you read book, it will not happen.
Cool. Got it. So I mean, basically the idea is there are many examples of the implication of technology. I just want to show a couple of slides before I end. So, the cost of sequencing a genome is dramatically reducing. What was like 10, 20 million to to sequence genome is sub $1,000 now. At this rate, we will reach a point where it is almost free, right? So, and that type of data is going to be super valuable in diagnosing and treating a lot of diseases, right? And this is a big implication. The immediate side effect of something like this is gene editing. And as you saw in the previous slide, I don't know if you quickly flip through, the amount of research that's happening in gene editing is so vast now, and we're going to reach very ethically challenging places like design of babies, being able to change the genes and design the next generation. This is bandwidth cost performance. This is computing costs, which we saw, storage. Cost to launch a startup, right? Photos taken every year. This is an example of the democratization we was talking about. The unlocked photos could go to 86 billion, right? So that is probably only happening in the richest part of the world. And then with digital, it just goes crazy, right? So these are some of the tech killed by smartphones. Right? And this is 2011 prices for all these devices. There are like ton more devices. If you search for things that smartphone replace, you will see a lot of them. And this is a good collection of them. So it's almost like $1 million worth of equipment that is free when you go and buy a phone, right? So these are I think I would stop here. Any questions, comments?
What is exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the point of my conversation, because the answers are difficult for this. So unless we spend a lot of time thinking about it, reading about it, and conversing about this is going to be a really difficult challenge. Right? It's not a challenge that a government can deal with. It's not a challenge that institutions can deal with. Right? So this is a really, really complex problem.
For any individual person, what is suggestion?
I think we need to become more aware, right? So, while we are specialized in our areas, we also need to be broader, right? We need to start understanding the broader landscape a lot more. And spending time there is critical. It is an insurance in understanding the implications. Sorry.
When we spoke about the technological gap between actual growth and the organization, so it's a huge gap. And when it is the entire, hard work, then it is a huge thing, and maybe we will also lose the fact, and everything is randomly on this idea.
Sure.
Is it because you could have thought of this thing from different organizations? Is it possible to tie up these organizations with other institutions where actual work is happening to have, what do you say, to be up to date with what is happening with the growth and development, and the organizations are up to a little ready with anticipation of what they can expect in the coming years,
Right.
and a little ahead. So
Yeah.
that there are no surprises suddenly, and I have to cope up with whatever the person comes
The nature of the problem is there will be surprises. Right? So a surprise is unavoidable. Right? But by thinking deeply and thinking first principles, we can have better responses. Right? That's all you could do. But in terms of predicting exactly what's going to happen is impossible. Right? It's very difficult.
That we can never achieve.
Correct. So the only
But you said Kodak, for example, they have started the digitalization at a moment where they don't see any revenues.
right.
But these are the experiences from which we can learn that it might not be an immediate revenue back to the organization, but they do have to spend their resources with
Right.
respect to time and money to keep them updated with the latest research. I think
Yeah.
that is a huge gap with respect to all this latest cloud technologies and AI, nano and all. I don't even know what's happening. We're so much engrossed in our building our products, which the client wants,
Yeah.
or something. Where do you have the time? You don't have the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a real challenge, right? And one of the books I would recommend is this book called Deep Work, and it kind of really talks about some of the stuff that you spoke about earlier in terms of on one side we can speak to anybody in the world, and it's free or almost free, but on the other side you just get distracted a lot, right? So the solutions to the opportunities that are available to us and the problems that come with it needs to be so as a society we are figuring this out. We're getting better and better, right? So very few phones go on during a conversation. Like only 3 years ago you need to tell everyone, oh, switch off the phone, but you don't have to say anymore because we've learned, right? So this is it takes a little, we are a little bit slow, right? Given our brain, that's what we could do. But I think there is no good answer. The good answer is in one, recognizing that we have the limitation and constantly, trying to be on top of it. Right? And things like Meetup is great because you are getting somebody who has spent a lot of time in, many years to learn something, and you get that pretty quickly, right? And this type of stuff is powerful to be able to deal with those.
This is very informative. Like like where are we right now, and what could be our future. That's thank you for this. And you said like you are a founder of some organization. So what exactly you are working on?
Probably we'll take that offline. I don't want to.
You have a slide, I think your last slide already has that.
Okay.
This is a website.
Yeah.
Switch to.
So you could reach me at balaji@matchlabs.com, and so this is a meetup group that I'm starting here in Bangalore called Hack Thyself. So the idea is, one of like I said earlier, one of my hobbies, interest is in hacking, self-hacking. So how can we change and improve our performance cognitively and physically, and this is a big topic. So for some of you who are interested in this, check out transhumanism. So the idea of transhumanism is how do we add technology to us, like we already have hearing aids and plates for bones, so we already start to put technology inside like pacemaker and so on. But we're going to reach a point where these technologies are superior than the biological equivalent, right? So if one of a couple of examples quickly. One is now there's like a bionic eye that is being currently tested by FDA. So it's basically they take the lens from your natural eye and put this bionic eye, and it dramatically increases your vision, right? So you increase your vision by 3-4 times. So that's a replacement to your natural eye, but way more superior. The same thing is going to happen to hearing. The same thing is going to happen to so many other parts. And this is a topic that is critical, and this is one way transhumanists believe that we could deal with the technological change. If we just depend on our wetware, it's not going to be enough. We need to add silicon to our wetware, right, to be able to deal with these challenges. And there are a lot of things that, a lot of experiences of people who have improved performance in various areas could be adopted without a lot of work. So that is the goal of this meetup. And I also run the meetup in Singapore, which I mentioned earlier. Thank you.